with congregation, with jama'ah inside the masjid is 27 times more rewarding than to pray individually. And also we stated the hadith of the Messenger ﷺ who said that a person, if it was not for the women and children, then I would lead the Muslims in prayer and command the youth to go and burn the houses of those people who do not come to the masjid and offer their prayers with congregation. So that is the punishment, the wa'id for those who miss congregation, and what about those who miss salah altogether? And also we stated the hadith where the Messenger ﷺ said that whosoever recites 40 salah with congregation without fail, so for 40 days he prays his namaz with congregation and he does not miss takbir ula, means Allahu Akbar, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make Jahannam haram for him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place him in paradise. So there are many rewards, many virtues for reciting namaz with jama'ah. Now inshallah our topic linked to jama'ah, to congregation, is imamat, leading the prayers. Who is worthy of leading the Muslims in prayers? Inshallah I wish to start with a few ahadith of the Messenger ﷺ, and I will continue with a few important rulings regarding imamat, regarding leading the Muslims in congregation. In Abu Dawud Sharif, the narrator is Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He narrates that the Messenger ﷺ has said that the best amongst you should deliver the adhan, and also the best amongst you who recites the Quran should lead the jama'ah. Now, when the message by the best amongst you in terms of qira'at means that those people who know how to recite the Quran properly and also who understand the Quran. So these people are the ones who should lead the jama'ah, who should lead the prayer. In Abu Shaykh, the narrator is Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala, and he narrates that the Imam and the Muazzin will get the same reward of all those people who pray that salah. So our Haji Sahib who delivered the adhan, he will get the reward of all those people who came and offered the salah. And the Imam Sahib will get the reward of all those people that he led in prayer. So this is the maqam and the status for those people who lead the congregation and jama'ah. In Tirmidhi Sharif, narrated by Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu, Hazrat Abu Umama radiallahu ta'ala, he narrates that the Messenger ﷺ has said that the salah, the namaz of three types of people does not pass through their ears. Meaning that their namaz does not give them any benefit, or the namaz will not be accepted. And what are these three types of people? The first is a slave who has escaped his master. Until he does not return to his rightful owner, his master, then his salah will not be accepted. This applies to the times when there used to be masters and slaves, but this doesn't apply today. The second is a woman who spends the night with her husband being displeased with her. Allahu Akbar. So for my sisters listening at home, a woman who displeases her husband and her husband is displeased with her throughout the night, then her salah is not accepted until her husband is pleased with her again. And thirdly, and the namaz of an imam is not accepted who the people behind him despise. So if the people behind the imam despise him for valid reason, then the namaz of the imam is not accepted. Imam Ahmad, the narrator, and Ibn Majah, the narrator is Salama radiallahu ta'ala, and he narrates that the Messenger ﷺ has said, the signs of the Day of Judgment is that people will try to shift responsibility of imamat upon another. So nobody will claim to lead, will acknowledge to lead jama'ah. They say, you pray, you pray. They will try to shift this responsibility upon other people. They will not find an imam who can lead them. This is the reason why. The reason why they will try to shift the responsibility is they will not be able to find a rightful person, a person who is worthy of leading the Muslims in jama'ah. And we can see this developing nowadays. Now with that, may Allah forbid. In Bukhari and Muslim Sharif, Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala, he narrates that the Messenger ﷺ has said that when a person leads others in congregation, then he should be sympathetic and diligent towards the people he is leading. Why? Because there will be people who are ill, there will be old people, there will be weak people. So when you lead jama'ah, you should not prolong the jama'ah for long duration. We should shorten it. Why? So there are weak people praying behind you, it is easy for them. But if you're praying on your own, then you can elongate your namaz as much as you want. Okay, so this is the ruling or hadith regarding that. In Sahih Muslim Sharif, narrated as the Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he narrates that once the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he led us in congregation, he led us in jama'ah. On completion, he faced the congregation and he said, "O people, I am your Imam, and do not precede me in sajda, ruku, and in other parts of and qiyam, in other parts of namaz. Precede me, that do not go into ruku before I do. Do not go into sajda before I do. Because I am your Imam and you should follow me." And sometimes this happens, before the Imam goes into ruku, the muqtadi they go into ruku. Okay? We should not do this, otherwise our salah will not be accepted. We should always precede the Imam. We should always proceed into the action after the Imam does. And the Messenger continued by saying, "As I can see you from the front and behind." Subhanallah. A person might ask the question, how did the Prophet ﷺ know that the companions were going into the positions before he was? When the Prophet is facing towards the front. This shows that the Messenger, this is in Sahih Muslim Sharif, this shows the Messenger ﷺ had knowledge of the unseen. And he could see as strongly as he could from the front as he could behind. Those people who neglect and defy the honor and the maqam of the Messenger ﷺ, this is mentioned in clear hadith and Sahih hadith. Now, considering the rulings of Sharia regarding imamat, there are 6 conditions for imamat. So 6 conditions have to be met in the person who is leading jama'ah. Nowadays we just, there's a few hours and we just push anyone to lead jama'ah. Okay? Not every single person is worthy of jama'ah, we should understand this. Okay? There are 6 conditions for jama'ah. The first is obviously the person has to be a Muslim. The second is he has to be mature. He must be mature and have reached the age of puberty. The third is he has to be sane. The fourth, he has to be a male. The fifth is qira'at, meaning that he has to understand, he has to know how to recite the Quran correctly, with the correct rules of tajweed, etc. The sixth is he should not be a ma'zur. Now, ma'zur is a person who, for example, for a whole duration of time, he's suffering an illness. So let's say a person who is bleeding, and he keeps on bleeding for the whole duration of a salah period. And he is classed as a ma'zur, and he cannot lead namaz. Now, the rulings of ma'zur, inshallah, we've covered in the past actually. And just to quickly summarize the rulings of a ma'zur, let's say between Asr and Maghrib, a person was bleeding continuously, it did not stop. He is now classed as a ma'zur. Now, the ruling is, in the second time period of the salah, he shall perform wuzu once. Irregardless of whether he will stop bleeding, he will perform wuzu, and for the next duration of salah from Maghrib to Isha, he can recite salah, he can do as much worship as he wants. Then when that salah period finishes, when Maghrib finishes and when Isha begins, he will have to perform fresh wuzu. Okay? So this is in short rulings of a ma'zur. So he cannot lead the people in congregation, he cannot lead jama'ah. The ruling is women can lead women. However, this is makruh, this is disliked. Okay? So women should pray on their own, but they can lead women, although this is makruh. Okay? Women can never lead men. Okay? That is important. The second ruling is an immature child. Sometimes in the madrasa, children lead children. Okay, this is allowed. An immature child can lead immature people praying behind him. Yes? But an immature child cannot lead mature people. To recite behind an individual whose aqidah, okay, this is a very important ruling. To recite behind an individual whose aqidah, whose beliefs have led him out of the folds of Islam is not allowed. However, if the aqidah of a believer, if the aqidah of an individual has not led him out of the folds of Islam, then it is makruh tahrimi to recite behind such an individual. Okay, and there are certain groups, certain deviant groups, who na'udhu billah mock the Messenger sallallahu, they have disrespected the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Like I said before, by claiming that he has no knowledge of the unseen. Some people have written in their books that to think of the Messenger in salah is worse than to think about donkeys and these kind of things, na'udhu billah. These are the certain things people have written in the kitabs. To pray behind such people is not allowed, and we should abstain from this. And also to pray behind people who believe that we're mushriks. Yeah? We all believe in wasila, which is permissible, and these kind of different beliefs of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. People believe that those people who believe in wasila, etc., they are mushriks. Therefore, to pray behind such people, your namaz will not be allowed. But those people whose aqidah does not lead them to kufr, it is makruh tahrimi. We should really not recite salah behind them. However, if for example it is Jum'ah and there is no other place to recite Jum'ah, there is no other people to recite Jum'ah, then he can pray Jum'ah behind those groups whose aqidah have not led them to kufr. Okay? This is very important. Now the conditions of being a muqtadi. Okay? People who pray behind the imam are known as muqtadi. What are they known as? Muqtadi. Okay? Learn these terminologies, they're very important. So the imam is the person who leads the Muslims, and the people who recite behind the imam are classed as muqtadi. Okay? Now a person who has come late, if he has missed 1 or 2 rakats or 3 rakats, then that person is called a masbuq. What is he called? Masbuq. So the person who recites behind the imam from start to finish is called a muqtadi. And a person who came late behind the imam is called a masbuq. And a person who prays on his own is a munfarid. Okay? Munfarid. So you have a munfarid, a muqtadi, and a masbuq. Okay? Who is a masbuq? Yes, a person who came late. Who is a muqtadi? He prays from start to finish. And who's a munfarid? He prays on his own. Okay, munfarid. So know these 3 types of people. So the conditions of being a muqtadi, what are they? First is he needs to have the intention to follow the imam. That's the first. Okay, he can't just come and just say Allahu Akbar. He has to intend that he's praying behind this imam. The second condition is they have to be reciting salah in one place. So in this masjid, this is one place. So if the imam is praying salah here, and the person can listen to him at home through the radio, through the receiver, will his namaz be valid? No. Because they have to be in one place. And the third condition, there are many conditions, but I've highlighted the important ones here. The third condition is salah should be one. So if the imam is reciting the asr, you should also be reciting asr. If the imam is reciting maghrib, you should also be reciting maghrib. Okay? And also the same date and time as well. So if the imam is reciting today's asr, then, and you missed yesterday's asr, then you cannot pray your yesterday's asr with the imam. Okay? That is important. So your salah should be one, and the time should be one as well. Ruling: if there is a gap between the imam and the muqtadi, a gap big enough so a car can pass or a carriage can pass, then the namaz of the muqtadi will not be valid. So let's say the imam is here, and then there's 2 safs, roughly 2 safs, and then on the 3rd saf the muqtadi are stood. The first row of the muqtadi is stood, then namaz will not be valid. There has to be a small gap. Okay, so this is fine, but 2 safs and more than 2 safs, it is not valid. Okay. Therefore, the muqtadi should pray straight behind the imam. A person reciting individually far away from the imam, where the gap is more than 2 rows, then his namaz will not be valid. And this is regarding a large masjid. Now what is a large masjid? A large masjid is a masjid which is 40 feet by 40 feet. Anything 40 foot by 40 foot and greater is a large masjid. So this is greater than 40 by 40. But this is considered to be a large masjid. So if the imam was reciting here and there was 2 safs and a person came later and sat in that corner and joined jama'ah, then his jama'at will not be valid. His prayer will not be valid. We see this often where, on Friday prayers or even in Tarawih and stuff like this, where we are forming the first rows and people, they start to pray at the back, thinking that eventually the rows will come to me. Okay, his namaz will not be valid until the rows meet him. Therefore it is important that we complete all the rows first, and the people should come to the front and fill and complete the rows. Now if it's a small masjid, if it's less than 40 foot by 40 foot, then a person is allowed to pray further back. Okay, because we call it a small masjid. Now what is the ruling for reciting behind the imam who belongs to a different school of thought? So let's say for example the imam is Shafi'i and we are Hanafi. What is the ruling? The ruling is that if the Shafi'i scholar or a Maliki scholar or any other scholar, okay, one thing important to note here is that all the rulings that I'm covering belong to the Hanafi school of thought. So if you belong to another school of thought, please consult your own imams. But let's say we are Hanafis and we're reciting behind a Shafi'i, a Maliki, a Hanbali scholar. And it is important that the scholar has met all our criteria. So for example, according to the Shafi'is, it is first to wet 1 strand of hair when doing the masah. But for the Hanafis, we have to do the masa of a quarter of the hair. If the Shafi'i scholar has only wetted one hair, according to him, he's fine. According to us, that is not sufficient. Therefore, our namaz will not be valid behind him. Okay? So therefore, it is best to pray behind a Hanafi scholar. But if you know that the Shafi'i or the Maliki or the Hanbali scholar has acted upon all the Sunnah and is fulfilling all the Hanafi criteria, then that's fine, you can pray behind him. If you're uncertain, then it is makruh to recite behind that scholar. Okay? So this is one important note. Now women praying behind the Imam or praying in congregation, the women should form the safs right behind, right to the end. Okay? It is this, like the scholars say, that women should recite salah in their houses. And like I mentioned last week, that the salah of a woman outside her house, okay, to recite salah inside the house is better to recite it than outside, or come to the masjid for a woman. Therefore, if a women, they should perform, if they are there, if they, for some reason they're in the masjid or they come, they should perform these rows at the back. Now, if a woman came in a row, then the salah of the people, the men on her side and behind will not be valid. Therefore, women should always form the safs at the back. One important ruling about women praying on the upper levels of the masjid. This so happens sometimes when we have a mahfil, a gathering, and women come and they pray upstairs or downstairs. Okay, what is the ruling? And they pray with congregation. What is the ruling? The ruling is that if the imam is, let's say this is the ground floor, okay, and the imam and the men are here, and the women are on the first floor reciting with jama'ah, then the namaz will be valid. However, if the women are on this floor, the imam is on this floor, the women are on this floor, and the men are upstairs, then all the men praying behind the women, so let's say the first of the women is here, and the men, the second or the first half of the men is there, okay? So all the men upstairs praying behind the women, then the salah will not be accepted. Therefore, it is very important that our women, or we make this clear to our women, that the best thing is for them is to pray on their own. And inshallah they will get more reward for this as well. So this is the ruling for women who pray with congregation. Now the next question is, who is worthy of leading jama'ah? Who has the most right of leading the Muslims in congregation in prayer? The first and the most important person is that person who is the most knowledgeable concerning salah, concerning cleanliness, and knows enough Quran in order to recite the correct tajweed. Okay, this is the person who has the most right of leading the Muslims in prayer. And obviously, he should also be abstaining from gунah, from sin. That is very important. And then after him, who is the next most person worthy of jama'ah? Is a person who knows how to recite the Quran with the correct tajweed. He comes next. After him is a person who stays away from doubtful things, let alone haram things. So a pious individual. After him comes a person who is the eldest or the oldest age, okay, or he who has been in Islam the longest. He has the next right of leading the Muslims in prayer. The next is character, the person who has the best of all characters. The next person is he who offers nawafil, the tahajjud, etc. And then a person who is handsome. Then a person who has good lineage, good family, and who is respectable within the community. So this is the order of those people who are worthy of jama'ah. Now, in a masjid, for example, this masjid here, the person who is most worthy of jama'ah is the appointed imam. So the imam who has been appointed to lead the Muslims in a particular masjid, he is the most worthy of leading the Muslims in congregation. As long as he fulfills all those criteria, meaning he has knowledge of namaz, he has knowledge of cleanliness, tahara, he has knowledge of how to recite the Quran properly, etc. If he fulfills all these, then he is most worthy of leading the jama'ah inside the masjid. Now, let's say you're a host, okay? You're a host, or in your house you have guests. Then who is more worthy of leading jama'ah? The ruling is, if the host, if the owner of the house, if he fulfills all these criteria of knowledge or recitation, then he is the most worthy of leading jama'ah. Unless he says to one of his guests, you may lead jama'ah, you may lead congregation. Otherwise, the host and the malik, the owner of the house, is the most worthy of leading the Muslims in congregation. And finally, the last ruling is regarding the deviant sects. Okay, like I mentioned before, those sects, those people whose aqidah has not taken to kufr, Okay, so for example, those people who do not believe in the Afzaliyat, the great maqam of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala, they say Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala, he's greater than Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala. Okay, those people, they are misguided, but you cannot class them as kafirs. Okay, so to pray behind these people is makruh tahrimi. Similarly, an open sinner, a person who sins openly, it is makruh tahrimi to recite behind him. Similarly, an alcoholic, a gambler, a person who deals in interest. So a person who sins openly, it is not permissible to read salah behind that person, individual. Similarly, a person, according to the Ahnaf, according to the Hanafis, it is sunnah mu'akkada, okay? It is a stressed sunnah to keep the beard. So a person who shaves the beard or trims it so it is less than a fistful, you are not allowed to recite salah behind that individual. Yeah? Now people, they always ask me the question, ask our scholars the question, but you know, the fazila of jama'ah is great, is immense. So if there's a few of us, we should do jama'ah. The simple answer to that question is that why should we bend the rules of Sharia to accommodate our desires? To keep the beard is sunnah mu'akkada. Now we are trimming it, we are committing a sin by trimming it. Now then we expect to lead jama'ah. Then why should we bend the rule of Sharia to accommodate our desires? Rather, we should start adopting the sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ and practice the Sharia. That is important. So we should not try and bend and make Sharia flexible to our causes. No, Sharia is cast in stone. We cannot change it. But we should be changing our actions to accommodate Sharia. Okay? That is a very important note. Therefore, if there's a group of us and that we have no beard or we are not compliant, we do not fulfill these criteria of imamat, then we should pray on our own. Because the jama'ah will not be accepted. Rather getting 27 more reward, you will not get any reward. Therefore, it is important that if we do not fulfill the criteria of leading the Muslims in prayer, we should recite salah individually. So that is very important. And if you want to lead jama'ah, if you have the desire and shauq to lead jama'ah, then start implementing the sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ. Learn some knowledge, learn how to recite the Holy Quran, grow a beard, and inshallah you can lead as many people as you want. Therefore, the simple answer to the question is, we should not bend the rules of Sharia, but we should change ourselves in order to adopt the rulings of Sharia. And this is how it should be. Inshallah, this is the end of the ruling of Imamah. Next week, unfortunately, I will be away, so next week's session shall not take place, but inshallah the week after, quite possibly Ramadan Kareem will have started. And inshallah that week on a Sunday I shall be talking about the fadila of Ramadan and also the fadila of fasting and also the important rules concerning fasting. So inshallah I would like to see all our brothers in great numbers in the month of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, many people attend anyway because shaitan is locked up. There's no shaitan, there's nothing stopping us from coming to the masjid. That is one important thing to note here, that you will find that people in Ramadan Sharif shall come flocking to the masajid. Why is this? They say that, oh, shaitan is locked up, so there's nothing influencing us, from stopping us from coming to the masjid. What is that telling you? That is telling you that the natural condition of a believer is that he is attracted to the masjid. And the shaitan is the obstacle stopping him. Yes. So what we're doing is shaitan is inhibiting our natural attraction to the masjid. So outside of Ramadan, for example now, why are we letting shaitan stop this natural attraction to the masjid? So we should, outside of Ramadan, we should also come to the masajid and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not let shaitan influence our decision making. That is very important because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that shaitan is your open enemy, aduwwun mubin. And if we had any open enemies out here concerning the dunya, we would not speak to them. Yes, we would keep them at an arm's length distance. We would not even look at them, nor would we give them salam if they were Muslims. But shaitan is our open enemy, then why do we give in to his desires? Therefore, my dear brothers, inshallah, when the month of Ramadan will approach, we shall cover these important rulings regarding fasting. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our session, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala firstly give me and all of us the tawfiq to act upon and implement the teachings of Sharia. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم ارزقنا علما نافعا ورزقا حلالا طيبا واسعا وعملا متقبلا وشفاء من كل داء. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.